October 7th, 2024. Administrator Bonesack, call the roll.
Scott? Zerden?
Present.
Jensen?
Present.
Ball?
Present.
Absent Maroney?
All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
All right, can I get an approval or amendment of the agenda for tonight?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to the Bushman Road project. Paul?
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council for inviting me to come talk to you guys tonight about Bushman Road. So I'm just gonna kind of go through the status of our work plan here and kind of dive into a little bit of how the open house went that we held here on the 25th. I think I'll start with the open house. Generally speaking, I think the open house went very well. We had a lot of good, sorry, I got a fly flying around my head. A lot of one-on-one discussions with property owners. We sent out invites to all the adjacent property owners along Bushman Road, inviting them to come to this open house and speak with design staff, our right-of-way staff, and get a lot of their questions answered. We received a lot of good feedback. Some of the major concerns that came up, and I think we're all kind of aware of these, the right-of-way impacts to trees. There was a discussion about a small extension of Ranchette and some of the drainage issues. So after the open house, well, starting off, we had 17 people that signed in on the sign-in sheet. I anticipate, we think we had about 25. Some of the people didn't sign in. We had a lot of good one-on-one discussions, especially with those on the north side of Bushman Road, where we were seeing some of those large temporary easement impacts. We talked those over with 2 or 3 of the residents that had the largest impacts, and post-meeting, we were discussing a little bit how to maybe address some of those. We came up with some good ideas, and we've started kind of investigating those a little bit. Speaking with Public Works Director Zierden, we started incorporating some strategic curb and gutter in some spots to help bring the construction boundary in a little bit and reduce the impacts to trees and things. And so the major impacts that we're seeing are starting to kind of work themselves out and be within that 33-foot right-of-way boundary that we have set aside for permanent easement. So that's what we're kind of working on right now. The status of our design, we're at about a 60 to 70% plan level. So if you attended the public meeting, we had actual plan sets printed off. We were able to start kind of diving in with those one-on-one conversations, look at cross-sections, look at property impacts, like actual specific tree impacts and things with residents. And so I think that went over very well, having those prepared. Like I said before, we are working on some general adjustments to not only adding curb and gutter, but putting some profile adjustments in, lowering in some spots and raising to help condense those construction limits and help ease the right-of-way concerns of some of the residents along there. With the adjustments, we're also finalizing our wetland permit application. So with doing those adjustments to the profile and curb and gutter, we're also seeing our wetland impacts decrease pretty significantly. We're waiting until we're kind of finalized on our construction impacts before we formally submit that wetland application to begin the wetland credit process for some of the wetland impacts that we're having. Schedule-wise, so we're looking at another public meeting at the beginning of December, and we're hoping that we have final delivery of plans around the end of December of 2024. This is all kind of dependent on that right-of-way process. We had some general questions that came up at the public meeting that I think I've had some requests to address in a public forum. There was a lot of discussion about why we didn't consider moving the roadway south, moving Bushman Road towards the power poles, or relocating those poles. I did go back and look at the study that was done by Bolton and Mink in 2021. They had a cost estimate, so at that time, there was still considerations being made for realigning Ranchette Drive in a different configuration. And they had some discussions with, I think, Great River Energy at that time about the cost of relocating those power poles. And at the time, Great River Energy was saying that it was about $30,000 a pole. So at Ranchette Drive, that was about $150,000 cost. I went through the Bushman Road corridor just from County Road 11 to Ranchette Drive, where if we did move the road south, that would lessen the impacts on the north side of the road. There are 16 Highline poles that would have to be moved if we did move the road south. Per the 2021 report dollars, that's about $500,000 in relocation costs for those poles themselves. Going back to that cooperative report that was prepared by Bolton and Mink, you know, the report looked at a lot of options for the county road standard, the local standard. We've been going by the local road standard since day one and using the existing alignments. So it was never in our scope of work to look at alternative alignments. We took that report and are implementing the recommendations from that report. There were also some general discussions about, you know, moving the road south, would that impact the costs? Or even moving Ranchette Drive to the west towards the gravel pits, would that change the cost? Well, it would significantly change the cost of the project. You know, your big ticket items like the paving, the gravel, and that kind of stuff doesn't change. What really changes is the amount of grading that you're doing, and that is a substantial amount. If you move Bushman Road to the south, you have a lot of grading that needs to take place. If you move it to the west, there's a new road grade that has to take place. There are a lot of impacts to even private roads, private driveways. You either have to extend or shorten roads and driveways in that circumstance. That would add to the cost of the project. And just environmental considerations, wetland impacts. If you're moving the road south, there are wetlands that you would have to go through to establish a new grade. The impacts that we're seeing with just leaving Bushman Road where it's at are pretty minimal, just for the amount of widening, basically. We looked a little bit back to see if the report that Bolton and Mink prepared looked at a rehabilitation option. That was another question that came up. That report did not evaluate a rehab option, such as a reclaim or you know, doing a overlay or a mill and overlay or something of that nature. And like I kind of said before, our scope of work was to take the recommendations from that 2021 report and move them forward through final design. And so that report did not address the rehabilitation option. The right-of-way acquisition process continues to move forward. Appraisers were on site today. We're still, like I was saying before, we're still adjusting construction limits. We're trying not to get too ahead of ourselves with presenting exhibits and things to residents that may not be finalized. So as we're adjusting these limits, we're staying in contact with these residents to say that, hey, we showed you this the first time, it's a big impact to your property. We're still adjusting these things and trying to minimize the impacts to your property moving forward. Our right-of-way agent, Benton, did attend the public meeting. He had a lot of good touch points with residents during that time too. So overall, the public engagement meeting, we feel went very well, had good attendance. It achieved what we were hoping and talking one-on-one with the people along Bushman Road. And that December meeting, we're hoping to kind of cast a broader net again and talk about construction impacts and what that means for everyday travelers. I think that's kind of the main point we're going to try to get across with that final public engagement meeting.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone?
None for me.
I don't have any. No, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
That was a
everyone.
good update. I'm glad it was well attended. All right, we will go ahead and move on to the open forum. Please, if anyone has anything, come up and state your name and address.
I will be brief. Bill Toft, Greenstein Drive, Breezy Point. Thanks for letting me speak. I have two items I want to address tonight. One's a suggestion for an agenda for next month, and one is an administrative question. First of all, I feel every time I've come up here, I've tried to watch out for the Breezy Point taxpayer. So what I might say now might kind of surprise some of you, but I think, I believe an agenda item for next month should be that you folks should discuss and vote yourselves raising your compensation. My suggestion would be 2 times what you're making now that put you in line with the other cities and councils of similar size that we have. I do not agree with all of you, especially 3 of you, in a lot of issues, but I respect you being willing to serve and sit in those chairs and take the heat. I also believe that a higher degree of compensation will result in a higher level of due diligence when decisions, especially big decisions, are being talked about. I'm not criticizing anyone, but I think a great way to get a hold of citizens is to knock on doors. And that's how I think you really get a feel for the people that live in the community and what their wishes might be. You know, the thing is you have to listen to them. But I think added compensation, I think, would be a good investment for our community, and I think it would end up saving us money in the long run. I want to thank Councilman Scott and Councilman Jensen for always watching out for us as taxpayers. My administration question is, has there been an event permit turned in for October 19th yet?
What?
Yeah, I don't expect an answer tonight. I just, if you could get a hold of me at some point. For disc golf. They're not calling it a tournament or an event, but they're having what they call a gauntlet out there on the 19th. And, you know, we put a lot of time into putting that event permit together. I suspect there'll be over 40 people. I had checked with Mr. Chansky when he was still here, and they had not turned one in as of a month ago. Or maybe they have by now. But the purpose of this was to alleviate the liability for the city for what goes on down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Gary Bakken, B-A-K-K-E-N-N, 29464 Shoreview Lane. I have an introduction I'd like to share with you folks. I have been here in this wonderful city 30 years. 30 years. And I'm ashamed of my city. I'll tell you why. I mean that with all my heart. Rentals. I'm going to share a story with you. I'll be as quick as I can. I'm sorry Michael is not here. I hope he reads the minutes. I won't tell the location. It was on the north side of the lake. It was a rental. 2 years ago, somebody up on the high hill, 3 o'clock in the morning, shot off bombs. Bombs. You've heard them explode here, all across on 4th of July. Why do we let that happen? It drove out the people that purchased the property right next to them. They left here and went back to Minneapolis. They were personal friends of mine. I found them a house here. That's what happened. No investigation, nothing. I'll get to Reynolds. I'm sharing that with you. I'm very upset on the people that are walking out the door with hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayers' money. I'll be more precise. Rentals, number one. I and Scott Reeley, R-E-E-L-O-I, kitty corner to me on the peninsula, have been having trouble with a property directly across me. Police have been out there many times. Last 2 years, Mr. Reilly has notified the police. He threatened me last year. His words on the telephone were, "Don't report it. I'll take care of it." He did nothing. He lives in Minneapolis. What are you going to do? Takes you a half hour to get anybody out there? No. Seven cars were parked in his driveway. 7. I got pictures. The planners got pictures. The police have pictures. 4 cars in the garage and 3 trucks down the road. Documented. The owner was there, and I got up the next morning, they'd left, and garbage, overflowing garbage, which I have pictures of, was on the ground. That's why I'm upset. Nobody gets anything done here. I'm not zoning in on anyone. Let the petals fall where they may. Administrator. The city has had 3 administrators bail, one recently who took a lot of money, twiddled his fingers for quite a while. Taxpayer money, people. I'm ashamed of that. One of those people sit on the council today, Doug Rock regime. He quit. Now he's on the council. Toxic environment. What is a toxic environment? It's coverall. I talked to the league. That's what everybody says. Toxic environment. It's the administrator whose job it is to take care of a toxic environment rather than walking out of the city hall with $100,000. Do something about it. I will be back here, I promise you, with every I would like the new council, whoever is voted in 2025, to research, and I urge this council tonight. You got 3 months to see how a new employee contract can be written so they don't walk out the door with hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' money. I'm working on that with the Attorney General. I'm working on that with the league. And I urge you, do your due diligence for 2025. We have to close that loophole. End of story. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else have anything? All right, we will go ahead and move on. Do I have an approval or amendment of the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to new business. Administrator Wonsack or Chief Sandell, who's taking this one?
First item is the camping on public property, and it's a proposed ordinance. That proposed ordinance was developed by the chief of police, and the intent is to bring public property into basically the same status as the rest of the property in the Breezy Point, which prohibits camping. This would be considered the first reading of that ordinance. The second reading would be held at your next meeting, if you so desire. That being said, that ordinance would probably go into effect if it's approved after the second reading, the first of the year upon publication. Is there anything in that proposed ordinance that you would like to see changed, or it really hasn't changed from the workshop that was when it was presented last week?
Have anything?
I have no concerns with the draft as it is.
I have no concerns.
The only question I have is, and maybe it was just my misunderstanding of what was brought up at the workshop, but that the ordinance would go to prohibit camping on public property.
Correct.
So is this a standalone ordinance then from others that exist that don't allow camping on private property, or?
The other city ordinance is in reference to undeveloped properties. So if someone owns a property, they cannot camp on that property. So this just follows suit and includes the rest of the city's public property, as well as someone's private property. Currently, we do not have anything that states someone can't camp on a minimum maintenance road in front of their property.
Okay. So the language then, just to clarify, the ordinance that's being amended is including language to not allow camping on essentially all public property.
Yeah, this is a standalone in the camping aspect. So this is a new ordinance completely. It doesn't include the privately owned property,
Okay.
but it does include all public property within the city of Breezy Point.
Just a clarification, it's a standalone ordinance that adopts Chapter 132 and amends Chapter 132 of our existing Code of Ordinances. So it'll become part and parcel of our code upon adoption.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
None for me.
No.
I think,
Motion would be in order to hold, to approve the first reading of proposed ordinance, or Chapter 132, regard camping.
can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the camping ordinance under 132 for public property.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
So Jerry, with the action the council takes tonight, is there ever a point at which the public is able to comment on? the
We
proposal?
actually will publish
Or-
a notice that the second reading will be held on this ordinance, which prohibits camping on public property.
So that would be
We'll
the,
put a public notice in the paper.
okay, so at the November council meeting then would be the opportunity for anyone that wants to comment on it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the police vehicle order.
So after COVID, we started experiencing delays with our squad car orders. As we all know, that includes a lot of things, but in order for us to obtain a squad car sometime in 2025, we need to place an order now to do so. Our last squad car was ordered in October of last year, and we just received it last month. So it took us approximately 11 months to receive that squad car. If we wait until the end of the year to place the order, we will likely not receive a squad car in 2025. So I'm just looking for approval from council to make a request to place a car in order for purchase in 2025.
Anybody have any questions?
No questions for me.
so Chief, how does the approval of moving forward and purchasing the vehicle coincide with what are we looking at for the cost of that vehicle?
The cost would, is part of our capital outlay. I believe it comes in right at $60,000 for the squad car and equipment. That's already planned
So-
in the budget for the following year.
Okay, thank you.
And you typically make that order in December? Is that when you typically?
No, well, ever since COVID, we've been doing it in advance.
Right,
We've got an authorization from the administrator to do so. Otherwise, we don't receive the squad car, but considering Administrator Chansky is no longer with us, I thought it appropriate to bring it before council before we did such this year.
okay. I don't see an issue with that. All right, do I have a motion then to approve the purchase?
I'll make a motion to approve ordering a 2025 police Tahoe.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will go on to deputy clerk wage increase.
There's a memo in your packet requesting consideration of an increased wage to of $5 per hour for the deputy clerk, with the administrator and the assistant administrator leaving. And I'm only here part-time. Deb needs to pick up some of the pieces, fill in the blanks, and this is typical request. It's a temporary request until the job duties change, but it's very typical in other communities to do the same thing when somebody leaves and somebody picks up the pieces, or takes on the extra workload. So I would recommend approval.
Anybody have any questions?
No, I think it's warranted and should be done.
Yeah, I have no concern.
Yeah, I guess my question isn't anywhere along the lines of whether or not it's justified. It's more so to, I guess, why $5 additional an hour? Was that based off of some comparable situation in other communities, or I'm just trying to understand kind of how?
I just finished an intern administrator position in Cross Lake. That was the typical wage increase over there was $4 an hour. And there were, I believe, 2 positions where they were temporarily increased to 4. The hardest part of that is when the time is up, and to take that $4 away becomes somewhat of a delicate situation. But I think rewarding people that step up and pick up the pieces, I think is valuable to the city.
I would agree, and then yet I also think about how in different ways, and again, this isn't anything arguing against or not seeing the need to consider additional compensation. You could probably make a reasonable argument that there are other staff too that are taking on certain things, and so that's, I guess, part of my concern is what are we doing, or what are we needing to consider as far as what other staff are doing in light of not having a full-time permanent administrator on board? Because I certainly don't want to be part of a situation where people leave feeling like that's fine, you're being recognized for stepping into additional roles, like with the elections and so forth. But I can't sit here and say that I know what Janet and others may be doing too, that, there could be an argument of some additional consideration as well.
I think we would deal with those considerations when they come about until I find out actually what's going on and how many of those roles are increasing. I can speak specifically for Jeanette. She and I are right now trying to get a handle on the budget and the budget process so that we can talk to you folks intelligently about that, because neither one of us were involved in the process. So I see her as taking on some additional roles down the line too. As of yet, we haven't gotten more past the study phase, but we may come forward with another request down the line.
And I don't want to in any way get ahead of ourselves when it comes to that. I would like to see, whether it's at the next meeting or the following month's meeting, an understanding around what are other staff doing, what other duties are they taking on during this period of having an interim administrator, just so that we can potentially be addressing other needs that are there that staff are stepping in on and addressing, and are being considered for whatever level of additional pay that they.
I'm certainly willing to discuss that with the council down the line. I'm still trying to catch up.
I can understand that.
And I think too, we hired you knowing that you've been in this position more than once, and so you definitely know whenever you're asking for something, it's because it's needed. And I think for me personally, I trust your decision making, and so I would be in favor of this increase. Does anybody else have any questions about it?
None for me.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to temporarily increase the deputy clerk, city clerk wage, $5 an hour, starting September 4th, 2024.
I'll second.
Great. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to Shoreview Lane repair. Supervisor Reardon, or who? All right. Amy.
All right. Good evening. Here to speak to you about Shoreview Lane. The permits have been acquired from DNR and Corps of Engineers to complete the proposed repairs caused by the ice damage. And our recommendation to the City Council tonight is to authorize advertising for bids. We think that it would be in the city's best interest to proceed with that process. A lot of the work, the majority of the work is the type of work that could be completed during the month of November. Some of the work, pending the weather, would not be able to be done, so we would need to have a final completion date, probably May 30 in 2025. But if you bid this at this time of the year, we feel you'd get some reasonably good bids by doing that. So some of the work that would likely have to be completed in the spring would be the paving. Obviously, there's some patching out there that would need to be done. Also, the DNR did impose some live stakes to be placed to regenerate some of the vegetation in that riprap embankment. So pending that, actually the fall would be a good time to do that if they can. So we want to give them that opportunity, but otherwise it'd have to be done in the spring. So hopefully by this time, with your authorization, we'd have bids for you to consider next month at your regular meeting.
And we would want to get this done as soon as possible because it could happen again, correct?
It could,
This winter?
it
Okay.
could.
Well, with the bank, the way it is pushed up, I mean, this road has had ice like Mille Lacs, happens every year, go across the road, and the city had to use front-end loaders to clear it. If that ice pushes into that bank, my concern has always been the manholes where the city sewer runs out to the point. I mean, that could cause, I would assume, potentially, some damage, increase the cost of the project. If we get a snowy winter as well, not having the full width of the road is going to present problems to Public Works. They're going to have to end up hauling snow out to keep the road as open, as possible. So I think it makes sense to me.
So you'll have something for us to vote on next month, correct?
At your
Okay.
regular meeting.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
No, I think it makes sense to move forward.
None for me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead, the Dub Street Speed.
Oh, do you need to make a motion?
What do we,
A motion to accept the Shoreview Lane repair and authorization to send the plan out to bid?
oh, yeah, okay.
I'll make that
Sorry.
motion.
I thought we were
I'll
voting
second
next
it.
month. Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. All right, go ahead and move on to the Dub Street Speed signing.
So the memos relates to the map that I attached, that little red dot. That got posted at 35, I think 2014. Not sure why. My Simon inventory shows it should be 30. I do know Ranchet was 35, so possibly an employee in the past put what he thought was the correct one. Sergeant Garcia brought it to my attention, and that's why I checked their survey. So this isn't a change, this is just a correction, so you know. We're gonna pull it down to 35 and put what should have been there for the last 10 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I always wondered why it said 35, and when there was a stop sign that went,
To be honest, I spend about that much time watching street signs.
oh, that is interesting.
Funny it's been that long, but.
I know, because I've always wondered why they did that, and why would they increase it to 35 when it stopped?
That's the best I could determine what happened, and it, you know, this will correct that situation. I mean, I deal with all sorts of sign questions. That's kind of how I find when something disappears, that sort of thing. But the road plan will map out our signs better than our old inventory, so.
Oh, that is interesting. All right.
Because, I mean, I wouldn't just change a speed sign without authorization. Like, I'm not going to pull down a 30 and put up a 45. That's just the intention that this is what we're going to do, just so you know that the mistake was noticed and we're correcting it. So.
Well, it makes sense now more so than it did before. All right. Do we need a motion to replace? All right.
I'll make a motion to replace the existing 35-mile-per-hour speed limit sign on Dove Street with a 30-mile-per-hour
Second.
speed limit sign.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Brush site speed study.
If we could pull the map up to start, so I can describe. So if you look at the bottom portion of the map there, center, the circle with the arrow pointing out, that's where our sign is located right now. It's in blackout mode, so it does not display a sign. We did not want to influence drivers one way or another, so we could obtain the most accurate data as possible. So what a radar does is it shoots a signal out in front of it. When it strikes a car, it bounces back at the sign, and that's how it determines what the speed is. So up at the top, you can see is Ranchette Drive, and there's a little corner. It's off the map there on the upper side, but so that sign will reach people turning onto Percheron from Ranchette Drive once they come around that corner and all the way to the sign. However, at Belgian, the cross street right there, two prior to the sign, right there is Belgian. There is a dip and a hill there. So when if a car were to turn off of Ranchette Drive, the sign will pick it up, but it will lose signal when it goes into the dip, and then when it comes back up on the top of the hill again, it will capture the car again. So if someone's coming in off of Ranchette, going all the way to the brush site, and then leaving again on the same route, it's going to count that car as 4 times on this when you look at the car counts by day. So it's hard to determine exactly how many cars we have coming and going. That location picked up the majority of the traffic on that roadway, but it will, obviously there's duplicates no matter which way they go, because once they leave the brush site, they're back on the sign. But if they're coming from Ski Chalet specifically, they could be counted up to 4 times for the same car on the same trip. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that. And then as far as the speeds that are displayed on here, when it says average peak speed, once a car is on the radar, the peak speed is the fastest that car gets to while it's on the radar. So the peak speed is for one specific car, and it's the fastest it's going while it's on the radar. So the average peak speed would be an average of all the vehicles that the sign captured. With that, we also included some additional statistics from September 17th until October 1st with speeds. And it will display on there what the number of traffic and speeds are during those time frames. Any questions at all?
The road speed limit is posted at what, 30?
It's 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, so just noticing that, that graph that shows average speed over 30, right, it's at 100%. So does that mean that every vehicle that the radar picked up was going faster than the posted speed limit?
So I believe the graph you're looking at is the blue one?
Yeah.
With the darker blue? The 3% is the darker blue, and then on the right there it says over 30 miles an hour average. So 3% of all traffic was over 30 miles an hour. 97% was under 30.
And like I said, I think at the last meeting or the workshop, that, I don't know if that area for me would be where we would catch a lot of it. I think it's the roads coming into it, just
Right.
because of where Suffolk, you turn left, which is where a lot of those trailers come from. And then by the time you reach the sign, then you're going the downhill. So downhill probably is when you're gonna see it the fastest, but I guess I would be interested to see how fast people are going on Suffolk. Just because that's where I've seen the majority of speeding.
And if the council wishes for us to move the sign to Suffolk, we certainly can. The reason it's on Percheron right now is because residents from Percheron came in with a petition.
Yeah,
wrote
and
this
they
sign.
live, I think they live what, on Belgian and like,
I don't know specifically where
yeah.
they,
So I can see, because if you look at Ranchette, so when you take a left on Ranchette onto Percheron, you do go down a hill to that stop sign a little bit.
Belgian, yes.
Yep, and so you can't really gain a lot of speed on Percheron, just because the stop signs are,
Well, there's quite a distance from Belgian Drive to where the sign is
correct, but it's a
located.
huge hill going up.
Right, but there's plenty of time to
Right.
for people to get up to speed, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly, especially if they're coming straight down Percheron.
Well, there's a stop sign in Belgium. There's a four-way stop on Belgian and Percheron. So you have to stop there. And then there's a big hill going up Percheron to the middle of it, and then that's when it flattens out to where the sign is. So yeah, I agree, but usually people aren't necessarily speeding up the hill. Not that I've seen. I take that road 6 times a day. I guess for what I've seen more so is the speeding on the other 2 roads that have no stop signs that are pretty hilly. But I do think that a lot of times we do these speed studies and realize that they're not going as fast as we think, just like on Bushman Road. You went out there and you also saw that, but I think it does help residents to get this data so that they know for sure how fast people are going. I do know that I had a resident come talk to me off of Suffolk because her grandkids play out, close to the road. So I know there has been issues for sure with speeding on that road with the trailers. And I think it would be helpful just so that residents can see how fast people are going. Just to say, hey, we did the due diligence and we did the research and this is how fast we clocked everybody going. I don't know what anyone else thinks. It's kind of hard if you don't live over there, I suppose.
I don't have an issue with moving the sign and putting it on Suffolk, I guess, just based on the petition that we had received, but.
I don't have a problem moving it.
And if we do move to Suffolk, would you like the speed to be displayed or not displayed?
I don't think you should display it because I think that would give more of a true, people don't think it's on if it's, and then they don't stop. I think that's going to be a more accurate read of it. I would be curious to know how fast people go on Suffolk, just because it seems like they're speeding, and there isn't any, stop signs. But again, a lot of the branches that come off, a lot of them come off on Suffolk as well. I would say the majority of branches that I've seen come off on Suffolk go right in front of even Sergeant Garcia's house. But
I actually wouldn't mind taking a look at the speeds on Suffolk and then having the sign as well blackened out just past, what is that, Sioux?
yeah,
Because to me, what I'm hearing or understanding is the issue is the speed once they start coming down the hill,
yep.
right? And it'd be, I think, worthwhile to just understand, what does that look like? I mean, do we have truly ridiculous, outrageous speeds occurring? Or does it just seem that vehicles are traveling faster than they are because they are bigger vehicles? I think at the end of the day, that's really the primary issue is just with the hill that people go down in order to go straight into the compost area.
I wouldn't want to live down at the bottom of that hill, especially if I had kids, because that is actually like, they're going down a hill, you're flying into the compost. I mean, that's,
We can put it wherever council would like, I just need to know where you
yeah.
want it.
I think Suffolk, maybe towards like the, back half or middle, to, just so they can get in, just to see what they're traveling before they hit that stop sign.
So my question being, coming into fall now, we're gonna have heavy traffic for a little bit and then it's gonna die off. If we've already had the speed sign on Pertron and we wanna find out what it's doing coming down the hill by the dump, I would suggest probably putting it
First?
someplace in front of the dump first, so we have
Okay.
consistent data instead of taking a couple weeks off and then moving it. That's gonna.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I think that would work. I would be curious to know how fast people are going when they're going into the compost site. And if they're going that fast, they're not reading the sign that basically states the rules. So I would be good with that. Everybody else?
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, do you need a motion to move a sign, or?
I do not.
Okay. All right, so we will go ahead then, and staff reports. Supervisor Zierden, cemetery.
So the memorial paving project is in place. All the pavers were laid. Over winter, we're gonna come up with terminology and how it actually works. I think it turned out pretty well. The new columbarium foundation was poured today. So I will talk to the columbarium manufacturer, see how long it needs to sit before the columbarium can be placed. Should happen before winter. Possibility we'll get a sidewalk around it. Whatever doesn't get accomplished this fall will be done first thing in spring. But I think there's a good chance we should get the sidewalk around it and then most likely wrap up landscaping in springtime.
Any questions?
I don't.
And then community garden?
Community garden, right now the water lines are in place. We've made a few alterations to the design based on my coworker's vision of long-term maintenance, essentially between the big plots, widening out a path so the skid steer could bring mulch and that sort of thing and lessen the amount of wheelbarrow work. As a consequence of that, that added a couple larger gates than what we had planned. Not a huge difference in cost. And then we met with our fencing contractor today who altered how I envisioned construction. He would like to see the fence up first, whereas I was thinking we construct everything and put the fence around it. And he also mentioned we should put a bottom rail, so that added like $2,000 over the estimate. But based on where we're coming in on lower water costs, I think the budget shouldn't change a lot. We're going to save in other areas that you may have some areas that are a little bit more expensive, but it's so far going well. Dirt should be arriving this week. They're hauling in free wood chips. That was a huge part of that budget, and I think we might be able to get all the wood chips for free. But having the fence have to be constructed first, that'll kind of slow us down. They'll make the gates next week. We're kind of finagling on when it's going to go up. He's under the understanding we want the fence up as quick as possible. Then as soon as that wraps up, the rest of the stuff inside, I think we should hope in late October, early November, we should have something you can really look at and walk through. So
It's exciting, thank you. Any questions on that?
No, thanks.
Anybody have anything to report?
Yes, I do. we had the first ad hoc streets committee meeting September 4th. At the meeting, the main objective was to establish a chair and vice chair. So Tom Nelson is the chair, John Monnier is a member, Craig O'Reilly is another member, Jason Gore is vice chair, and Lenny Sod is also a member of the committee. Meetings will be the third Thursday of every month. I think it was a very productive meeting. I think the residents that volunteered are very competent, and I think it's going to make council's job a lot easier. So they'll be keeping busy. There's plenty of projects coming up, and I don't know if you have anything else to add, Joe?
No, I was actually going to talk with Dave to see how the road study is going along, to see if we, what our next meeting agenda looks like, and just topics. I know we're early in that process, but I'll firm that up with Dave this week, and we'll work with the chair, Mr. Nelson, and if we need to plan our meetings and agendas and go from there.
Right, thank you for sharing.
I just have a couple comments too on the open forum. To Mr. Toff's comments, initially that permit was by number of people. The clubs know that they don't need to pull a permit, and that is legal. But I guess if I'm sitting on council in 2025, I'm gonna bring it back up because I think it should be tied to number of people. They're in essence gonna tie up that course for the day. You know, the VRBOs, that was there was a lot of meetings that year. It was very controversial, but I think what it's always gonna come down to is enforcement by the city. And I think council needs to keep a close eye on that. And, you know, that's another issue. The previous administrator and assistant city administrator, they were very busy and there was really no focus on enforcement. I mean, property owners that are allowed to rent have rights, but so do residents that abut the properties. I mean, they all have rights, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that maybe something to look at is, well, first off, we know there's a property that has issues, like continuously like having those issues, having something that's like if you have X number of issues.
It's all spelled out though.
It's in there.
It's already
so
in there.
I guess
So how
my
are we-
question is, I don't know.
I don't
what
know
really
about these.
happened.
Yeah, like we're
didn't-
not getting reports
I
on
didn't
them.
hear about it, so I'm not sure if it was investigated or not. And if it wasn't, as he indicated, then, I don't know why.
But
So,
yeah.
because there is a process, if you have I think it's 3
Yes,
violations that are substantiated, so there has to be
Right.
an investigation, then you lose your,
Did they have 3? Do you know? Was there
License.
3?
So right now, my belief is people are directed to report it to our planner.
Okay.
And he looks at them, determines if it's a violation or not, and I assume consults with the city administrator.
Okay. Yeah.
I had a long conversation with Mr. Bakken on, I believe it was Wednesday last week. We agreed that if he has a problem, that he needs to, at the time the problem is occurring, that he needs to call and say there's a problem. And we did give him the non-emergency police number to call. And he assured me that he was going to do that.
Okay.
I think some of the issues that he had before that were, he came forward 2 days later or 3 days later, and it wasn't when it was happening, so they couldn't document exactly what was happening.
Okay.
And the biggest issue in any enforcement is going to be having a record of something happening at the time that it happens. Then there's no disputing.
Right.
And that's the key to this thing. And I think, I remember 2 years ago having some of these same conversations, that we need to involve the police officers at the time that something's happening so that we have an official record and we can, if in fact there's 3 or 4, I think it's 4 violations actually, that you pull the license. But we have evidence that we can do something to enforce it. Without having those things happening, or getting those calls at the time there's an issue,
Yeah,
that's really happening. I know that Gary has complained to Peter a few times. Peter's actually talked to the neighbors, and the neighbors said, no, that's really not an issue. So there's some conflicting things going back and forth, but as I left it with Gary, and he assured me that he would call that number when there is an issue.
okay.
And I would give the same advice to any property owner that has a concern about their neighbor's property.
Right, okay.
And I've used that non-emergency number multiple times. Obviously, if the police have a higher priority call, they have to take that first, but it's very effective. If you have these type of issues, and to Jerry's point, they have to be documented. You can't call 3-4 days later. They need to be done when it's occurring. Give the city planner, a report, something to go off of that's current.
Okay, well,
Right, and so if someone calls us in reference to one of these complaints and we know it's a VRBO, we would inform the planner, so, he's gonna be keeping the stats on the violations.
And also, I don't think the majority of residents and/or taxpayers are aware, all the owners' contact information is on the city website, which includes phone numbers, email addresses, their address. I've contacted property owners. It wasn't for anything to do with a rental. It was something that was impacting their property that I thought they might want to know. So it's all on the city website.
perfect. Thank you for your comments.
Just quickly, we did have an interview for the fire district the other day for a volunteer firefighter. That went really well. So we will be adding one additional firefighter to the fire district. And then next week, we will have our quarterly fire district board meeting.
Perfect. Administrator Bowenstock, do you have anything for the agenda forecast for November, what we can expect to see as of right now?
Well, I do have a request from Councilman Jensen that we have a budget workshop. I believe there's tentatively, we're looking at the end of this month to have a budget, the first of them. I think in talking to Mr. Maroney, I think the intent was to have a budget workshop in October and November so that the first meeting in December, we could finalize that levy. So I'd be looking to you folks to get some kind of a date for a budget workshop, hopefully towards the end of the month.
Okay.
I'm gone the 28th and 29th.
So Jerry, you're talking about the end of this month?
The end of
Or-
this month for a workshop.
The 31st.
Okay,
probably
yeah,
would
I
work,
unfortunately
Halloween.
am not
No.
available.
No.
The 30th would work for me.
What about the 29th?
I'll be not available on the 28th or 29th. Away on business.
30th would work for me.
The 30th is probably the best
I'll
day.
defer to the
We're
rest of
gonna
the
do on that
council.
week for me.
Yeah, Councilman Scott.
Yeah, I am traveling out of the area for, other than the remainder of this week, for the rest of the month, so.
What about the first November's?
Yeah. Are you able to call in at all at a certain time, like just so you can participate in the conversation?
Is there any way that you could peruse that budget and we could have a phone call conference or something at some time to address some of your concerns?
And then you'd bring it to us then? Bring us his concerns when we talk about it?
Do we know if Michael's available on
I
the?
don't think he's
Michael's going
gonna.
to be available towards the end of the month.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why I'm
Okay.
saying that.
What
Okay.
about the first week in November, and we could just meet twice in November if we need to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open the next,
I mean, not the 5th, but
Week
the
two.
4th or the 6th or the 7th. I don't have anything those days.
That's
in
not to say we
November.
can't have 2 in November.
That's what I was saying, yeah, we could
Yeah.
try to fit 2 in if we need to.
I'm pretty
I think
open.
too, I think a specific budget workshop is definitely needed.
Yeah. I can do the 6th. I mean, I can do November too, the first week in November.
Because the council meeting will be the 4th.
Oh, sure.
So it may be after the 4th. So
Yeah.
if you want to do 2 of them in November, I have no problem with that.
So the
Okay.
6th, maybe?
Yeah, the 6th I'm open.
How's that for you, Brad?
It's a Wednesday.
Any days that don't work? And then maybe we can just schedule it, and if you give us the days that don't work.
So the council meeting in November is on
Monday, the 4th.
the 4th.
Tuesday's going to be the election.
Yep.
Oh,
Do you want to just get back to him with some time?
Yeah, I'm probably
since we're
going to have to
kind of
do that.
open?
There's a few things
Yeah.
that I'd have to clarify to know for sure.
Yeah, It's
If
a
you
month
can
out. so-
give me some dates that don't work, and then we'll try and work with you to
Okay,
get something that,
okay,
Okay.
yeah, that sounds good.
That'll work.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.